Are you ready for a little less noise and a little more peace? I have the solution. Join me for my 4 lesson online course, Meditation Made Easy for Beginners and Skeptics. I know what many of you might be saying right now. I can't shut off my mind. It's too hard. What's the point? I don't have time. It's boring. It takes years to benefit from it. It's selfish. Let me introduce you to 4 different styles of meditation: guided breath meditation, sound meditation, candle meditation, and mantra meditation. I can attest to the profound changes that occur from meditation. It's a deceptively simple practice, and you can start with as little as 1 minute a day. There will be 4 online Zoom sessions with me, and if you can't show up virtually, the sessions will be recorded and sent to you so you can watch them whenever it's convenient. It's donation based, so you can choose to receive it for free or have 2 other options: $20 or $40. You have nothing to lose but your crowded mind. So please visit shareyogawithmj.com to subscribe and register, or contact me with any questions. Spaces are limited, so don't delay. And now let's get back to the podcast. We hear the term holistic living used more frequently these days. It means keeping harmony and balance in all areas of your life: the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. My guest today, Robin Wilner, is a holistic coach and extremely devoted to helping women find their path to optimal living and feeling healthy, happy, and whole. I'm excited for you to meet her, so let's get started. Welcome to the Youthful Older Yogi podcast. I'm MJ Waddell, your yogi host and founder of Share Yoga. I've been practicing, teaching, and loving yoga for over 25 years. I'm an advocate of movement, creativity, and staying healthy in mind and body after 50. And so are my guests. It's never too late to start, and there's a lot of healthy years ahead. So let's start now. Hi, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Youthful Older Yogi. I'm MJ Waddell, creator and founder of Share Yoga, and your host of the Youthful Older Yogi podcast. I've got a really great guest today. Her name is Robin Wilner. Robin and I connected when we were part of the national tour of Mamma Mia back in, I think, 2007, 2008. And I've been stalking her, as I do most everyone I've ever met. And it just so happens that she is an amazing holistic practitioner. She's a experienced registered yoga teacher, 500 hours and more. She has a Master of Science in Holistic Medicine. She's lots of titles, lots of things after her name. And she's been practicing and teaching in big studios across the country, both in San Francisco and New York City. She's currently in New York City right now. And she also she combines the holistic wellness with eating, mindset, and movement, which is what I'm all about. And so she's the perfect guest to have on. So hello, Robin, and thank you so much for being the Youthful Older Yogi.
It's such a pleasure to be here, and it's so nice to see you again after all these years. I love it.
I know, it's wonderful. Okay, I'm going to jump right in. So I always like to have my guests just share a little bit about how yoga found its way into your life.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're catching me now that I just moved back to New York City about 3.5 months ago, because it was when I originally moved here in June of '01. I had just graduated from college and I was very optimistic and thought nothing could possibly happen to the world like it did in, September of that year. So 9/11 happened so quickly after I moved here. And it was shocking as a 23-year-old to be so bright-eyed and so optimistic and then suddenly feel like there were no possibilities. And aside from that, I had moved here to dance on Broadway, which eventually happened, which was great. But at the time, there was no work and a lot of anxiety. My parents were ready to drive across the country from Chicago, grab me and bring me home. So I can tell you that I was probably in a state of pure anxiety and was having panic attacks that I didn't even understand what panic attacks were at the time for a good 8 months to a year, maybe. until a friend of mine looked me straight in the eye and was like, I know what you need. And she gave me a yoga DVD. And I was getting ready to go on tour for the first time about a year and a half after I moved to New York City. And she was like, you're a dancer and you would love this because the movement part of it is going to make so much sense to you, but you also are going to feel less anxious. She was like, trust me, do this, you'll love it. And, popped the DVD in at home and started to do it and thought, wow, this is not what I thought yoga was. I've always thought of it, as most people do, as the asanas, the physical practice. And I didn't realize that the breath control and just everything that I could experience could calm my nervous system. And basically, I could just say, period, end of sentence, yoga saved my life because it became a practice that I needed constantly. And as I became a dancer on Broadway and I was on tour for many years, and that involved a lot of traveling, and it's very hard on your body. And I will say honestly that I was using it both to keep my body supple and to feel like I, didn't get injured quickly, but mostly it was the spiritual aspect of it that was kind of sneaking its way in. And pretty soon, when I was settled more in Manhattan and had an opportunity to find a home studio in my neighborhood, I found a great place called Sonic Yoga. And I started practicing. And there was a woman whose name I can't remember at this time, but she chanted with her harmonium and it changed my life. I was like, wow, I can sing and I can move, but there's no pressure on me like there is when I'm performing. It just feels very expressive and very authentic. And so that was kind of the deal for me to become a yoga teacher. I ended up getting my 200-hour training with Sonic and then subsequently with another studio called Laughing Lotus many years later. And then just the journey continued throughout my Broadway career, well past, as you know. And here I am all these years later. I mean, it's maybe 24 years now that I've been a practitioner and finding nuances to the practice as every year of my life goes by, as I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. But it just got me when I realized that there was so much more to it than just the physical practice. So that was kind of the doorway in, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. Perhaps Johanna Bell, which I think
Yes, she was my mentor at Sonic. Yes,
we did a
yes.
show together at Ford's Theater, and I know Johanna quite well, and I know she's
So cool.
so right, small,
Unbelievable human, unbelievable
yes,
for those watching and
unbelievable,
listening. One
yeah.
of the most incredibly authentic people, so kind, so generous, so giving. And she was both my teacher and my mentor during my training and has been a friend since. So that's special that we have that in common.
And you said Sonic Yoga, and then you know what? I'm going to try to get her on as a guest. Thank you for bringing that
Yeah,
up and sharing that. And
absolutely.
it's interesting. That's how I found yoga too. I was on the national tour, and someone said, "Hey, why don't you come to this yoga little stretch class?" I'm like, "Okay." And then it was like,
That's usually how it happens,
end
right?
of sentence.
End of
Period,
sentence.
done. That's it. I'm hooked.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm on tour. I'm traveling. I get it. It's not glamorous. People see the end product. We're bringing them the excitement and the glamour, but for us, it's a little different.
absolutely.
So, and can you share? I know you are very open about this. You had struggles with your body and the image of your body, as I got to tell you, all dancers do and all performers do. I don't know one that hasn't had this body shaming thing, and just I don't know. I don't have it anymore, but I did, and it's craziness. But can you share with our listeners how yoga um, helped you specifically around body shaming and disordered eating?
Absolutely. First, and I have to say, it's still helping me. I just want to throw that out there. It's not past tense. It has helped me so much. It is still something I struggle with at the age of 46. So I'm so glad you asked me this question. It was sort of ingrained in me growing up as a ballet dancer that my body shape was not okay, that having hips and having breasts was absolutely not okay. So there was this idea that there was something wrong with me, or that even at the very least, to do what I loved to do, I had to change my body. And when you're very young, you don't understand that you physically cannot change where your bones are. And what's interesting is that even though as I got older, intellectually, I understood that, I mean, everything that anyone had ever said to me was absolute bullshit. Let's be real. Like a teacher saying, "Oh, I'm so surprised you can actually do that with such wide hips." I mean, who can say these things to children? Even though I knew it on an intellectual level, there was something deeper. It was like my heart, my spirit had not caught up to my head. And I had been abusing my body for so long. And it's interesting because the yoga practice kind of also helped me on my path of getting my master's in nutrition and going that route, because I wanted to understand how food could be medicine and not be hurting me. I always thought of food as something to stay away from. And interestingly, as I started studying to become a yoga teacher, there were so many different types of practice, particularly ahimsa, nonviolence, where I recognized how much I had been practicing that against myself. And it kind of hit little light switch, if you will, of wait a minute, I'm abusing this one vessel that I have, one chance to be on this planet, to connect to the movement that then allows me to connect to my spirituality. And when I thought of it that way, I thought, I don't want to do that anymore. And I don't want to say that I sat down and it was just a conscious choice where suddenly I thought, hey, I'm done. But I can tell you that over time, the best thing for me was the practice away from mirrors. And I know that some studios and some types of yoga use them, and I'm very much against that. I find that putting a mirror in a classroom perpetuates the very thing that we're trying to get away from, which is to separate the self with a capital S from the body. So, what I had learned over time, and the more I studied philosophy and the deeper I got into my practice, was that my body was, as I love the late great BK Iyengar says, your body is your temple and the asanas are your prayers. And I will never forget that quote because that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like I was using my body to pray by moving it, which is similar to what I'd been doing as a dancer my whole career. I always felt better when I danced. When I was injured, I would be very depressed, as many dancers I'm sure understand, or any athletes listening. When you hurt yourself and you express somatically by using your body, if you can't do that, something shifts and you feel lost. And so being able to express with my body through postures and being able to connect to my breath gave me some kind of acceptance of how awesome my body was and how beautiful it was and how there was nothing wrong with it. And I also felt like as I became a teacher, I had a responsibility to actually practice what I preach and believe the things that I was passing on. So not only was I teaching new, students, but I also became certified more so that I could then teach aspiring teachers. And as I was doing that, I was sort of passing on the wisdom. And I thought to myself, hey, girl, you better believe it, because if you're going to spread this wisdom and teach it to other people, you can't be walking around thinking, oh, I suck, I'm fat, I'm awful, I'm ugly, my boobs, my hips. And it's just been a constant practice. It really has. And I think the combination of taking the mindfulness that I learned from yoga and putting it into the world of holistic nutrition, which is, kind of where I live, I'm in that side of things, that's tremendous to me, because that kind of consciousness around fueling your body and accepting it for what it is and where you are and how it's aging, that completely transformed the way that I see it. So I feel like the end is near. I'm not going to lie. I'm still kind of there, in a little bit of the dysmorphia. It creeps in once in a while. But I feel like my goal right now is I want to get to 50 and be like, and screw it, I'm here. And I just accept everything, what did I say to my friend once? I was like embrace the jiggle, I wanted to say hashtag, embrace the jiggles, embrace the wiggles, because it's actually beautiful. It means you're alive. And that took me a really long time to get to that. And it's, like I said, it's still happening. So thank goodness for this practice, because it's exactly that. It's a practice every day.
It is every day. And I'm going to tell you, as I'm approaching my 65th, I still look at my body and go, oh, crap. Sometimes.
What is that?
More often than not, I go, wow, look at what my body has done with me and for me and served me. And when I teach my students, I like, just before you do anything, take a deep breath and thank your body for doing everything it does for you. It's
Yeah,
amazing. The body is amazing. And
absolutely.
so, and it is a practice. It's a lifelong practice. You never wake up one day and go, I know all there is to know about yoga. I have no problems
Sure.
anymore. It's different
Absolutely.
all the time. Yeah. Um, so I'm looking over at my notes here. So in your experience with your clients and stuff, what do you feel comes up like
Mm.
the most common challenge or thing that you hear from your clients is if anything.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think two big things come up. One is, and it's such a buzzword right now, but burnout. People are consistently talking to me about feeling wiped out, exhausted, overwhelmed, all the things that we lump into this burned out type of feeling. And I work with women, so it's very common to hear this because there are these expectations for women to move their bodies and do things according to a rhythm that is not necessarily natural. So I just want to pause for a moment and say, like, all human beings have this natural biorhythm that moves with the sun, the circadian rhythm, right? Where the sun rises and then it peaks in the middle of the day and it sets at night. And we all have that. But female bodies also have an infradian rhythm, which follows the moon cycles. So whether you're still menstruating or have been through menopause, we as females have used the moon to cycle. And it's just really interesting to me that because we're being conditioned, especially in the 9 to 5 world, which I've never really been in, but I work with a lot of people who are, of course we're going to be thrown off because we're not moving with our natural biorhythm. So I'm hearing so much of this burnout and even just the idea of feeling like you have to move every single day the same way. I try to help my clients understand that it's not true. There are times of the month where yin yoga is your best friend, where a nap or a restorative practice needs to happen versus going to the gym and doing something crazy or going to a hot yoga class and, power vinyasa or whatever the heck you're doing. It's a completely different ballgame when you factor in that women have this beautiful infradian rhythm. So that is the first thing that I hear a lot of. And I think this just came to me without even thinking. The second thing I hear so much of without folks actually saying it is sort of the compare and despair. And I feel that it comes out in other ways and in other words, but it's this idea that somebody else is accomplishing something in some way. And so therefore I must as well, versus what the yoga practice teaches us, which is to be with ourselves in the moment and to accept what is. So many of us are like, yeah, screw that. Like, that sounds so great in theory, but that's too hard because to accept that every single day means to admit to yourself that you're not able to do something that maybe you wish you could or want to, which to a lot of, I think, females equates to failure. And this is something I struggle with all the time. If I can't still move my body, if I can't keep up with so and so next to me, whether we're talking about on the mat, off the mat, because to me, everything that happens on the mat is just a reflection of what's happening off the mat, right? You know what I mean? But I think that we have a tendency to compare and then despair rather than just sitting down and going, it's okay. I can't keep up right now. It's okay. And this goes with the burnout. It's okay that I am so wiped out. I cannot be superwoman and do every single thing all the time. My hormones are going crazy. I'm going to sit down and scream help and I'm going to let someone help me, which is also extremely challenging. So, so much of this relates to the yogic practice in that, to be holistic is to look at every single thing that is influencing you, right? Not just your physical experience, but what are you experiencing mentally? What are you experiencing emotionally? What are you experiencing spiritually? And to me, and you probably know this already, but when we speak yoga, I'm talking about everything but asana right now. Talking about just the discipline of being able to be kind to yourself and sit and go, I'm burned out, or I can't keep up with that person because maybe 10 years ago I could, but now I can't. You know what I mean? So those are the two big things that I think I hear a lot of, even if they're indirect, and that I sort of base my coaching around, which is to bring back that vitality and that acceptance for people in female bodies around, what you're feeling, and to listen in and tune in and then decide from there
Yeah.
versus what somebody
I
else is doing.
Yeah, I understand everything that you're saying. And you and I come from the same, I was started as a dancer. We're constantly being compared. And
Absolutely.
I also hate mirrors in the yoga room. I can't stand them. I'm like, that's the one of the big reasons I loved the first class I ever took. There's no mirrors. No one was looking at me, judging me, looking
Yep.
at my less than perfect turnout, looking at whatever,
Yeah.
you know. And so, but whether you're a dancer or you're a mom or you're a corporate professional, that compare and despair happens across the board, I think, for everyone, men and women.
Yeah.
I think men may not express it as much, but I think they
Oh yeah.
experience just as much burnout as women do. They just don't share about it. But
Yeah.
I think it's okay to, and I love that there are groups, specific groups for women and men or co-ed that just you're just talking about it, going, and it's okay. And I don't know, I'm not ever going to be retired, but I'm semi-retired because I'm collecting, my social security. But I have four jobs. So like it's like, but they're four jobs that I want to do. It's not like
Right.
I'm forced to do them. So there is some freedom in that. And you're right, it's just taking the time to sit with yourself. And what I've had to learn to do is go back to when I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8. And I was just full of hope and dreams and happiness, and
Hmm.
and went towards that and achieved most of it. But as you did, you have a dream, you have a goal, you go for it. But once you accomplish that, and then a gig is over or whatever, you go into depression. It's the pattern. And but then something else happens. And this is the ebb and flow of life, just like the ebb and flow of your
Sure.
brain, everything that has to do with yoga. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing about the burnout and the compare and despair,
Hmm.
because everyone's been there. And everyone, there's no one that hasn't been there comparing. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. And,
Yeah.
and so we both been in the public eye. We're both teachers. We're performers. I'm not a mom. Are you a mother?
No.
Me neither. Not a mom, which is interesting. I feel a little outcast about that because,
Same. Absolutely.
all my friends right now, they're grandmothers, literally. And I was never, in the group. I was the one, you know, and the grass is always greener, blah, blah, blah. And it was my choice not to have kids. But do you feel that
Same. Yeah.
there's extra pressure when you're in the public eye, when you're online, when you're as a teacher or a performer or a coach or whatever? The and is it self-inflicted? I guess is my
Mm.
question. Do we do it to ourselves, or is it real?
The pressure, you mean, to show up, or what specific pressure do you mean?
Just the pressure to be in the public eye, this perception of,
Mm.
like, okay, so here's the example. Before this, I made sure my hair was good. I put on as much makeup as I
Yeah.
never put on this much makeup, right?
Yes,
I'm like,
totally.
okay, what about my hair? That kind of, I feel like that's caring. I mean, I really feel like
Yes.
caring, that's not self-inflicted pressure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that some of it, and I'm going to speak for myself, but you will probably agree with me, some of it is upbringing. I think when you're sort of on your way towards being on stage, and I was on stage at a very young age professionally. So I was already performing at the age of 8 years old, and it was high stakes. And from that point on, it was sort of high stakes until I retired 10 years ago from Broadway, right? So to me, my friends will make fun of me about this. They'll say, hey, you know what? You don't have to work so hard. It's not a Broadway show. They'll actually say that to me sometimes, because it's like, oh, I guess it's all like everything has to be together. And even just to present yourself a certain way, I think what will happen for me is that reputation precedes. So people know I've been on Broadway. People know that I've done a lot of public speaking. People know that I've worked for some like really big Fortune 100, if you will, companies, right? So I think sometimes it is self-inflicted because I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, I have to go in there, to wherever I'm going and be flawless because there's an expectation to be flawless. One of the things that I'm trying to embrace, and I think this question's so great because the yoga practice helps me with this, is just being real in every situation that I'm in. And I think this also comes with time because I'll be real with you about this. 6, 7 years ago, still struggling. In my 30s, was still like trying so hard to just, I got to have this persona and this perfectionist thing. I think times have also changed in the last few years since the pandemic. But the expectation now, I find, is for there to be a humanness more so than ever before, even just online personas. You'll see it in social media, you'll see it, on YouTube, you'll see it everywhere, that we're craving connection to people on this level where you're looking at them thinking, well, yeah, me too. And yeah, I get it. And, she's not perfect all the time. And I do this with every client that I ever work with and every student that I ever teach. There's nothing that they will tell me that I haven't experienced. And I'll, fall on your face or make a mistake. I love making mistakes when I'm teaching. That is one of my favorite things, because if I don't, it seems like it's a performance. And I want people to know that I forget sometimes where my right is or where my left is, and that not everything that comes out of my mouth is perfection. So I embrace those moments when they happen because I think they make us more human and more accessible. And it's a yes, and I still do think that there is a societal pressure based on whatever it is that you're doing or whatever platform you're on to be at a certain level, right? And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon, but I embrace the idea that we can be flawed because, again, the yoga practice teaches you that being human is accepting being human means accepting being flawed, right? So also a practice that I have to work on every single day. The hair is not right, or I said the wrong thing, or afterwards, it's the whole idea of, playing it all through in your head after you did it and going, oh, I should have done it that way. And just going, it is what it is. And, people will say to me sometimes, your B- might be someone else's A plus. Just remember that no matter what you did, you touched someone's life, you helped them. And that's, if the intention is there for me, I'm working really hard on being less perfect, if that makes sense. And just kind of like letting it be.
Yeah. And you know what? It does get easier as you get older because
That's good to know.
you have less, well, from my perspective, you have less and less times me and my friends say, I have less fucks to give anymore.
Yes, I love that.
I'm all
I
out of
love it.
fucks. I'm all out of fucks for that. Sorry. So,
I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna use that.
yeah, please do.
Hey, the New Yorkers around me will love that.
So, yeah. I want to tell the listeners that you started running at 44. You're at 46 now, and you started running. And can you share why you started running and how's it going?
Yes, it's going amazingly. Right in this moment, I'm not doing it because I actually pulled a muscle a couple weeks ago, not from running, but from trying a new class that I was not ready for. But I started running about, I would say maybe about 14 months ago now, because a friend of mine and I was living in the Bay Area outside San Francisco. A friend of mine had been going to Orange Theory, which I'm sure many listeners know, the fitness studio. We had one where I lived and she'd been going and she was like, I love this place. I get so much energy out of it. I've lost weight. I feel so much better. And for the first time in a long time, I was driving a lot, and I had lived in New York for about 15 years. And then even in San Francisco, I never drove and I walked everywhere. I always thought of my body as, my car.
Right.
And then I was living in Napa, California, and I drove everywhere. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting all the time. And I'd been riding my Peloton at home during the pandemic and then wondering, why don't I feel awesome? And, in my body, my body had gone through some changes and I felt really strange. And so my friend was like, give it a try. So I went with her, and for those of you that don't know, there's a series of treadmills at the front of the room, and then a series of row machines, and then a weight floor with weights and TRX straps and mini bands and Bosu balls and the whole gamut, benches and everything. And so these treadmills are really, what am I saying? The impact is lower so that you can be on them if you have bad knees or whatever. And I'd always thought, dancer, bad knees, can't run, because I would try and it would hurt. And my lungs would feel like they were going to explode. And so my friend was like, just try it. You don't have to run. You can walk, you can jog, you can run. And so I got on the treadmill, and I probably had so much adrenaline running through my veins that day anyway. But I'm running, and then I'm rowing, and then I'm lifting, and I'm doing all these things that I haven't done in years. And it felt so empowering to do something that I had always thought I couldn't do. Like, oh, dancer, can't run, can't do that. And so I went back, and pretty soon I became a member. And to jump ahead, I'm actually a coach now. So that's part of my career as well. I loved it that much. But what I really enjoy about it is that every single time I run, I'm so proud of myself that I'm doing something that for my entire life I was sort of banned from doing, if you will, based on the way that my body was growing, the impact on my joints, the implication of how hard it might be as a dancer to run and then try to dance. It just there was some kind of disconnect for me, like you can't do both at the same time. And now I'm doing it, and I'm slowly learning to run outside. It's not exactly the same because the impact is a little too hard on my body, but it feels so empowering. And especially to be in my mid 40s and be like, heck yeah, I can do this, and I'm safe, and I understand it, and I know how to control how much I do, and when to pull back. And I'm expecting that I'll continue to be able to do this as I'm aging, because I think I'm more mindful about how I exercise. So I just love it. I just feel so high when I'm done. And that's
Awesome.
something I hadn't felt in a really long time. And I used to only feel it when I danced. And I don't dance like that anymore. So it's basically kind of replaced that need to express myself in that way. And I love it.
Oh, I love that. I'm so happy
Yeah.
for you. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Okay,
Thanks.
just a couple more questions.
Yeah,
Do you have anyone that inspires you?
I love that. So without even getting deep into it, we talked about choosing not to be a parent. I am so inspired by two of my best friends who are moms and had kids later. They had kids in their 40s. I find them super inspiring in that I watch them negotiating with what they want in their lives. And, we all lived the Broadway dream together, and they're sort of transitioning out a little later than I did. And I get inspired by the joy that they feel in this phase of their life with their children. And even though I know that being a mom is not for me, and being an aunt is so great, I love it. It's like I get to play with you, and then I get to give you back. Maybe one day I'll be a stepmom. But what I really love is, and I'm not here to say that it's all peachy, because I watch them in the chaos, but I see that. I get to see them in the chaos, and I get to see all of that. And then I get to see those really special moments where something happens with their kid that just brings them the utmost joy. And then I get to be a part of it too. And now I'm the auntie. So that really inspires me. And I was thinking about this from the yogic perspective, and we had talked prior to starting this about Ellie Ash. Is that her name? Did I get that right? I don't know very much about her other than she was 104 years old and was still practicing yoga, teaching yoga. And I want to say I read that she got to 105. And I have always been inspired by this woman as a yoga practitioner. And I will try something in a class and I'll fall over, or I'll say, we're not doing headstands anymore, or whatever it is. And then I just think, you know what? I'm going to be Ellie Ash someday. I want to be on the mat. And if I'm blessed enough to get to 100 years old, I want to still be doing it. And I want to love it enough that I still want to get in front of the room and teach it. And to me, that is so inspiring, because I'm much like you, like retirement, schmirement. Like I'm not here to like stop working because to me, it's like I need the intellectual stimulation. I need to move my body. And it's not just the yoga practice. It's all the things that I do. I'm inspired by people who are 80, 90, 100, whatever it is, and they're still doing it.
Yeah.
And they're not sitting back and saying life is over. They've got vitality and so much energy and radiance shining through them, and then wanting to share that with the world. To me, that is so much better than just lying on a beach, having a cocktail or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know what people do when they retire, but I don't feel like that's for me. So I'm always inspired by people who are continuing to be of service while also doing something that brings them joy.
Yeah. I have all confidence that you will be
Thank
80,
you.
90, 100 on the mat or in front of the room. That's what I intend to do. Literally, I can't ever imagine myself not teaching yoga. Even if I go in with a walker, I can still teach it. So,
Yes, yes. And that's the thing. I was like, it doesn't mean you have to use your body. It's like 1/8, one fraction of the practice is the movement.
yes, yeah,
So to me, being able to embrace all the other aspects of it, and also, you can still teach using your voice. I have every intention of doing that. But yeah, I can't imagine my life without it.
yeah. And I teach now
Mm.
I only teach once a week because I did for 5 years. I taught full time and I had the burnout.
Yeah,
It
it
wasn't
happens.
a choice. It was during a divorce and blah blah blah. But anyway, so now I teach once a week to a 55 and over community, and I don't ever, or will I ever, teach a handstand or a headstand to them or anything like, not even,
Yeah,
maybe not even crow pose, nothing like, but I am teaching them functional strength movement in yoga. And I'm telling you, Robin, it's like, I feel like a new freedom. Like,
yeah,
so now I can teach the way I want to teach. And I'm also in that same age bracket. So I understand what they're going through. Whereas when you're
absolutely.
a younger teacher and you have, you know, I didn't start teaching till I didn't start practicing till I was 34, and I didn't start
Mm,
teaching until I was like 10 years later. So, or 8 years later, something like that. Anyway,
yeah.
but now I understand when I was a younger teacher and we have, my room is filled with 40 and 50 years old, and I'm like, not 40 yet. I get
Yeah.
it. I understand it.
Totally. I get it too. I mean, I had so many injuries when I was starting my career as a dancer that I had 8 surgeries
Mm,
to repair things by the time I was in my early 30s. And I've said this to people before because, as we age, we love to talk about our ailments. So, I'll go into a room of older folks, or just even a room in general where people might come up to me and talk to me about something going on with their body. And, they might say to me, like, oh, I've got this thing in my hip or this thing in my knee. And I'll say to people before, well, I hear you and I feel you. I've been put back together like Humpty Dumpty so many times. People don't believe that when they see it. So I like to meet folks where they are by being like, hey, I know what you mean. And I also love that the practice can change with time and adapt to all bodies all the time. There's never going to be an age that we cannot practice. And it's not even about all the fancy stuff anymore, right? Like, even if it is as an empowerment tool, that's great. But also letting go of it is so great, awesome. Like, as soon as I herniated 2 discs in my neck, I was like, bye headstands, I'm okay. I'm not going to miss you. We're still going to be in this thing. It's like, I'm all right. There's so much more I can do that still helps me, and I can still help people get there. But I feel you. It's kind of a nice thing to embrace when you get to that point where you're like, yeah,
it's great. I love it.
I don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, I don't have to. I could teach it. I can stand there and teach
Yeah.
it. I
Yep.
can't.
Absolutely.
I won't demo it, but I will.
Yep. Yep. Same. Same.
Yeah. So I'm talking about moving into your later years. How are you experiencing? You're not quite 50 yet. So is there anything surprising to you that's happening either physically or mentally um, as you move into your later years?
It's funny. The first thing that I noticed was a forgetfulness that my girlfriends and I started saying, oh, I'm having a perimenopausal moment. Hold on. It was just like the funniest thing. I was about to say something, and then suddenly I would turn to someone and say, what was I just about to say? And that's been happening more and more than I would like it to, right? And it's a forgetfulness that comes with hormonal shifting. It's not a big deal. It just happens more now. So we joke about that. What I will say that's good, given where my background is and what I've been studying women's health and hormones and working in this field for a while now, is that I'm not experiencing the purgatory that could be perimenopause. So that is my blessing to myself. I had a really rough young life when it came to horrible periods and all the things. It's like every symptom you could possibly imagine: endometriosis, cysts surgically removed, all the problems, a non-hormonal IUD that is incredibly painful, and not just to have put in, or but it increases cramping and bleeding and all the things that you don't want. But I couldn't be on hormones while we were on Broadway because I don't know, I didn't know this, but it changes your vocal cords. I don't know if you knew that. It changes your range a little bit. So suffering until I got to like my late 30s, and right at about the time where I knew that things might transition and that my body might start to feel weird was around the time when I realized that nutrient deficiencies were responsible for all of this suffering I've been going through. And so the best thing I can tell you is that I've eliminated PMS, which I wish I could whisper in my 12-year-old self's ear and be like, it's going to be okay. Or, hey, let me help you now. I wish I'd had all this then. But there's so much more research coming out now about how to help women through this. We'll call it a long transition, because really hormonal decline can start as early as 35. So it's like this long hormonal shift towards menopause that we've normalized as being hell. It doesn't have to be. Even just PMS in general does not have to exist, but we've normalized it, right? So I'm trying to say, hey, listen, this isn't normal. And as I'm going through it, what I'm finding really awesome is that, like what you're talking about with your students, now I'm at this age where I can say, oh, I get it. Haven't hit menopause yet, but I understand the way to it. And I can understand that, yeah, things shift a little. And my body changed a little bit. And I didn't like it at first. And then I realized how I could shift and feel stronger and feel better. It's mind blowing to me how much better I feel now than I did 10 years ago, simply because I figured it out versus just kind of threw my hands in the air and said, oh, well, it is the way it is. And I'm just going to have to deal with weight gain and sluggishness and, brain fog and all the things. And I'm like, actually, no, I don't. Let's do this differently. And so that's been really empowering for me, is to not kind of give in to the stereotype of how most folks who come to see me feel, which is why I do the work that I do. So even though I've noticed the shifts, like the other day, I saw a varicose vein coming out of my calf, and I had to point it out to a friend, and I was like, what is that? It's those kinds of things, you know what I'm saying? And then I have to call my mom and be like, when did you start getting varicose veins? It's kind of funny now. It's like I'm embracing it in a way that I don't think I would have been ready for 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Now I'm sort of embracing, oh, like my skin's, like it's holding up. We're doing great, but don't attach to that thing, because that's going to change. Like those grays are they're underneath my bangs. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of funny to watch the shifts happen. And then the thing that I'm trying to do is not react so much with the sense of attachment, and just recognize, like, yeah, your hair's gonna go gray, girlfriend, and that thing that you like so much right there, that's gonna sag. So be grateful for it now and stop beating yourself up. So that's kind of what I've noticed, is like subtle shifting. And I would say even 2 or 3 years ago, I was like, resist. No, it will not change. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to just embrace it and allow it to be what it is. And like you were saying, telling your students to be grateful for your body every day, I'm trying to look at it as, my body can help me move from point A to point B. It can help me digest food. It can help me, have energy and have conversations. It can do all these things. So it's been interesting, but I have reached this point where I'm actually doing better now than I was. I would say even a couple of years ago. So that's kind of cool. Is like knowing you don't have to say like, oh, I give up. It's like, no, actually it's getting better.
It is watching. It's very strange. And I've said this before on my podcast, that aging, it can be very traumatic, because you've never experienced it before, first of all. You've never, my mom's been passed away from decades, so I can't really talk to her about it, but it's, And as dancers, I always thought my body is never going to be different from what it is right now.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, it's
that's
so
an
sad because it
untruth.
is.
I know that's an untruth, but it's really yes. I stay away from looking and judging because I wouldn't do it to someone else. So why would I do it to myself?
Yeah.
And so, but how we were brought up and disciplined in our upbringing, dancing, on stage, all of that stuff plays into it. But
Oh, yeah.
I started swimming about 6 weeks ago because I've got something going on with my hips. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. So I'm swimming.
Yeah.
I mean, in the first few laps, I was like,
Yeah.
but I went back because I felt so good afterwards, like you're running.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh, swimming is one of the best things to do cardiovascularly. It's so hard.
it is
So
hard.
hard.
Yes.
Kudos to you. And listen, am I influenced by looking in the mirror and then going to Orange Theory for a workout? Yes. I don't want to sit here and like lie to people and be like, oh yeah, I feel great every day. Like when I saw that varicose vein, I freaked the fuck out and was like, no, I'm not ready for that. And you're absolutely right. It is traumatizing in a couple of ways, especially as dancers, because we were dead by the time we were 32. Like I was told when I was little, like, oh, you're going to retire probably in your late 20s. I'm like, what is that? And then there's no real acceptance when you're a young woman around the fact, like, what are you going to feel like when you're a certain age? Like, no one wants to talk to you about what your 40s look like and feel like, or what your 50s look like and feel like, or what your 60s look like and feel like, and beyond. Now I think it's so different. And listen, I can't turn on my phone or anything without seeing people talking about menopause now. Like it's like everyone's talking about it. And I love that in many ways because I remember growing up, even just thinking that my hips, like being a pear shape was not okay. And somehow I had to like make myself narrow. And then menopause, who is talking about that? And now all these women, celebrities, they're making it something we can actually talk about. So it's not a word we're afraid of. So I agree with you. I still think it's traumatizing, but I'm embracing the fact that I don't feel so alone because I think more people are bringing it to the attention of young women or the women before me, like you, talking about these things now. And it's like, now I'm going, man, she's, 19 years older than me. And I want to be like that. I want to have that much energy and I want to be swimming. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's, I see it and I will beat myself up when I see something and I will have the trauma based on my upbringing. But the best thing that I think is going on now is the information that we have and the like, you're not alone. Like 50 is more fabulous than 40. And hey, guess what? 60 is more fabulous than 50. So I think that for me is great too, is that I have a lot of mentors and people that I can look up to that are like, hey, you know what? Yeah, aging can be really scary, especially for women, because we're not allowed. Like you have a line on your face, move, get rid of it.
And I
So
think
yeah, I think yeah.
I think, Robin, that you're a mover, and I am too. I'm a mover. I have to move somehow, so
Yeah.
that's in my benefit. A lot of people that aren't movers, they're the ones that are feeling more lethargic or whatever because
Yes.
they're not used to movement, and it's never too
Yeah.
late to start that movement. But I'm pretty sure for you that you will always be moving, and that is so important as we age. Just keep swimming, just like
Oh, seriously.
just
Oh
keep
my gosh, Finding Nemo. I mean, movement is medicine. I say this in every seminar that I lead. There isn't a single one that I have led where I haven't talked about a remedy of being movement.
yeah.
Movement is your medicine. You have to use it for every single dis-ease that you feel or anything that's going on. Movement is the medicine.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree.
So,
All
yeah.
right, last two questions. Currently, what's your favorite yoga pose?
Oh, pigeon. I will never stop loving a pigeon. And I'm going to say sleeping pigeon because let's be clear, if I get the bolster long ways underneath me and I can turn my head to the side and I've got my hips propped up on pillows and I get the yin variation, I am the happiest person on the planet. And I don't think that has changed for a really long time. I love a good hip opener. But yeah, I would definitely,
Awesome.
I'm going to stick with it for life.
I love pigeon too. I use lots of props in pigeon now, but I love it. So, um, and this question, I always give my guests a list of questions for their approval. This is one that I didn't put on there, but I ask all my guests. So, knowing everything that you know so far and all your experiences in life, typically the question is, what would you tell your younger self? But I like to rephrase the question. And knowing all that you know now and all the life experience that you've gathered, what do you want to tell your older self?
Ooh, that's so twisting it on its heels, MJ. Oh my gosh.
I
What would
know,
I
I'm
tell
sorry,
my
I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh gosh. No, you know what? It's funny because at first I thought I would tell my younger self, like, it gets better. It's okay, be patient. I almost want to tell my older self, like, hold on, I'm doing the best I can. you know?
Yeah,
Just like wait, be like, I'm doing the best I can to give you the best life wherever you are. And I'm going to keep doing it because I really do believe that everything that I do, and maybe even obsessively sometimes, is thinking about how am I going to feel 10 years from now? How I'm going to feel 20 years from now? And yeah, I think I would say just hang on. I'm doing the best I can. And I'm so proud of you that we got this far. I hope we can keep going. I don't know how old I am in this scenario, but let's just keep going.
that's great.
You know,
Thank you.
yeah, and never stop moving. I mean, that's that you just said it yourself. Like, please don't stop moving. Please don't stop moving. I would say it again and again and again.
Yeah, regardless of injuries, we've all had them. We're all going to have them. You might have a hip replacement, a knee replacement, blah, blah, blah.
Totally.
But there's still ways you can move. So,
Yeah.
Robin, I want to, before we go, I want to tell our listeners that all of your links will be in the show notes. And where can they find you? The easiest place for them to find you where they can get your free series?
There's two places. So my website is my company, joyfulremedies.com, which will be in the show notes. You can find everything that you need there, all the ways to work with me, as well as my free Optimal You 5-day wellness series. Another way would be on Instagram at robin.wilner. And there's a link directly to my freebie and website and all the things. Anything that you need is going to be right there.
I love it. I love it. And I love you for taking the time to reconnect and to share your story. Very inspirational. And you're doing great, Robin. You're just
Thank you.
You're flying free. It's all good. So thank you so much for being on the Youthful Older Yogi.
Yes.
And you take good care.
Thank you. So great to spend this time with you, MJ.
Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your comments, all likes, and all shares. Please subscribe to my website, shareyogawithmj.com, so you can receive my newsletter and be first to take advantage of my courses and freebies. If you navigate on social media, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Mary Jane Waddell. That's Jane with a Y, Jayne. This podcast would not be possible without the help of my editor, Dan Jones, from Cocoa Beach Productions. You can find Dan at cocobeachweb.com. And of course, thanks to my generous guests who share their time, insights, and youthful wisdom. Remember, the Youthful Older Yogi podcast is presented solely for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for a physician or other qualified professionals. Okay, yogis, stay well, stay youthful, and keep sharing yoga.